on this screen. Or I stand in the hall and talk to Sandy because I see it's guaranteed the time of month where you see Sandy. So thank you. Hey, good morning. How are you doing? Over here. There's a small. There is a little bit. The devices. Good afternoon and welcome to the April crop production and WASDE briefing. My name is Lance Honig and I serve as chair of the Agricultural Statistics Board at NASD. This briefing is for the Secretary of Agriculture and other policymakers at USDA to better understand the content and context of today's reports. We're very pleased to have Brooke Appleton, USDA's Deputy Undersecretary for Farm Production and Conservation, joining us as Secretary Designate today. And we also welcome Dr. Justin Benavides, USDA's Chief Economist. Before I turn things over to our presenters, I do have a few notes for our live streaming audience. The crop production and WASDE reports are considered principal federal economic indicator reports. The Office of Management and Budget provides specific guidance on how these important reports are to be released. OMB statistical policy instructs policymaking officials to refrain from making public comment regarding the content of these reports within 30 minutes of their release. Therefore, we will not be taking questions from the public during this briefing. Both NAS and World Board staff are available for phone or email questions, and NAS will host a social media event at 1:30 Eastern Time today. We strive to have everything presented at this briefing match the official record. However, should there be any discrepancies, always refer to the official published estimates. With that, I'll turn things over to Anthony Perlman. He is the acting chief of the NAS Crops Branch. Anthony will be immediately followed by Dr. Mark Jekanowski, chair of the World Outlook Board. Anthony?
All right, thank you, Lance, and good afternoon. I also want to welcome all those who have joined the live stream today. My briefing will be fairly short since the only new information that NASD released today was updated citrus forecast for the 2025-2026 season. But before we look at those citrus numbers, let's first look at some of the data sources that we use to establish the estimates in today's report. Now, in Florida, we conducted the objective measurement survey in 723 groves between March 11th and March 30th. Now, for this survey, trained enumerators went into the groves to make counts and take measurements. And then in addition to the survey work that we did, we also utilized administrative data from the Florida Citrus Administrative Committee. Now, this information represents the quantity of fruit packed and processed on a weekly basis. All right, looking at the citrus numbers in today's report and how they compare to both the previous season and the previous forecast. All orange production is forecasted nearly 2.53 million tons. This is up 3.7% from the previous forecast and is up 7.4% from the previous season. Non-Valencia production is forecast to be up 5.2% from the previous forecast and up 6.9% from last season. California production was raised 2 million boxes from the previous forecast, while Florida was raised 200,000 boxes. Valencia production at 693,000 tons is unchanged from the previous forecast, but is 9% higher than last year. Grapefruit production is forecast at 305,000 tons. That is down 1.9% from the previous forecast and down 0.7% from the last season. And then lemon production at 1.12 million tons is up 3.8% from the previous forecast, but down 1.1% from last season. Production in both California and Florida is up from the previous forecast, but Arizona is down. And then lastly, tangerine production at 1.22 million tons is up 11.1% from the previous forecast, but down 1.1% from last season. California production was raised 3 million boxes compared with the previous estimate, while Florida was raised 50,000 boxes. All right, this slide highlights a few of the upcoming reports NASS will be releasing. Looking at the remainder of April, April 17th, we'll be releasing our cattle on feed. April 30th, agricultural prices. On May 1st, they'll be releasing our CARES reports as well as the non-citrus fruit and nut annual summary. May 5th, corn, sorghum, and soybean county estimates. Those are always highly anticipated. And then we'll be back here on May 12th for the next crop production report. I will note that that will be the first yield and production forecast for the 2026 winter wheat crop. We'll also be releasing our Cotton Jennings annual summary as well as the Cotton County estimates on that same day. All right, as of today, we are less than 2 weeks away from the USDA's 2026 Spring Data Users Meeting, which will be held at the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City on April 22nd. Now, this will be a hybrid event. Additional information and a link to register can be found at the URL listed on this slide. All right, as mentioned earlier, Lance will be on X at 1:30 today for Stat Chat, answering any questions about the numbers in today's report. So that concludes today's NASS briefing. I will now turn it over to Mark to discuss the WASDE.
All right, thank you, Anthony. All right, I'll walk you through the WASDE. April WASDE for us tends to be relatively light on new information. We're going to be focusing, of course, on the old crop, the current crop year. But next month, May, is when we do our new rollout for the new crop year. So we'll get ready for that. We do have some new information from NASS to update, since the last WASDE. That would include the quarterly hogs and pigs report, grain stocks report, rice stocks, etc. But as you saw, we got no new production information from NASS this morning. Next month, we'll get those new wheat production estimates. We'll also do a little bit of a focus on South Africa corn in this presentation, where we raised our production forecast this month. So let's go ahead and go through each of the commodities, starting with wheat. You'll see here we raised our global wheat production forecast to a new record. So that's up 2 million tons this month from our March forecast. Mainly, all you see here is some changes based on official government data from each of those countries. Russia, we raised 800,000 tons. That's Rostat data. EU raised to 1.1 million tons based on their final official estimates, and a little increased Argentina as well based on AgMin data. In terms of the global wheat supply and use estimates, the main change this month that I'd direct your attention to is total use, raised 4.7 million tons. That is mainly an increase in food, seed, and industrial use in India, based on information primarily from FAS Post in India, where they raised the ending stocks estimates for India. So if stocks went up, that implies that they consumed less. So that reflects that reduction in total use. Again, mainly India. Feed use, some small changes this month across several countries. And in global ending stocks, up 6.2 million tons. That, again, mostly India, but also higher stocks in Ukraine, Australia, and Bangladesh. Global wheat trade, some offsets there. Overall, small change, but offsets lower. We reduced our export forecast for Ukraine, Australia, and Brazil, partially offset by higher exports from Kazakhstan and Russia. Ukraine, you'll notice that both lower exports and higher ending stocks. That just reflects the fact that Ukraine has the wheat to export, but logistic problems getting that wheat to the port, given the ongoing conflict there. U.S. Wheat supply and demand changes here. Relatively small, as you can see, raised our import forecast just based on recent census trade data. That the import increase this month, that's mostly an increase in Durham. Seed use reduced 2 million bushels based on the prospective plantings report and lower area this year. Exports were unchanged, but ending stocks up 7 million bushels, and we raised our season average price in nickel, now right at $5 per bushel, just based on recent NAS prices and expectations for the remainder of the marketing year. But at this point, we're almost to the end of the marketing year, close to about 90% marketed. Global rice production, small changes here, small adjustments. Japan up a little bit. That's all based on a USDA gain report. Thailand as well. I'm sorry, Japan down a little bit based on USDA gain report. Thailand up. That's also information from a gain report, and small reduction in Philippines based on government data. Global rice supply and use. Here again, relatively small changes. Global rice trade, we reduced 500,000 tons. That is primarily lower exports out of Pakistan, given a slow pace that we've been observing lately. And ending stocks, rice ending stocks raised 800,000 tons this month. That mainly reflects some historical kind of formulaic revisions to our ending stocks calculations, primarily in Iran. But again, that's historic, has nothing to do with the current conflict, just revising, doing some historic revisions on those stocks estimates in Iran. And that's driving most of that increase in global ending stocks this month. U.S. rice balance sheet. Some important changes here. Domestic rice use lowered 2 million hundredweight this month. That is incorporating information from the rice stocks report we got on March 31st. So higher stocks means lower domestic use. So that is why domestic use was reduced. That's all long grain, lower domestic use of long grain rice. Exports, we also reduced 3 million hundredweight. That is also all long grain. That reduction is all in long grain exports. And it includes both rough rice and milled rice. Worth noting that Haiti is our leading export market for milled rice, and we've been seeing some increased competition from Pakistan into that market. So adding it all up, that's a 5 million hundredweight reduction in total use. Goes right into ending stocks, raising ending stocks to 55.3 million hundredweight. That would be the highest ending stocks for the U.S. since the 1985-86 crop year. And didn't make any change to the season average market price, all rice price, but there are some offsetting changes by class. Long grain season average market price, we reduced 10 cents per hundredweight. Perfectly offset by an increase in 50 cents for the other medium short grain season average price. So that's the medium short grain grown in the Delta. Global corn production. Again, a lot of updates here based on official data releases. EU, that reduction, official EU data there. Russia raised 300,000 based on official data from Rostat in Russia. I'll talk a little bit about South Africa, which we raised 800,000 tons. And India, big increase in India's production. That is also government data, their second advanced estimate of the crop, and that is based on both higher area and yield. So let's talk just a little bit about South Africa corn production. South Africa, just for a little bit of background here, it's a top 10 producer in the world. It's an important exporter, mainly to sub-Saharan Africa, and grows a lot of white corn. More than 50% of the corn production there is white corn. And generally speaking, they've had very favorable growing conditions this year. And here's just a rainfall trace. So the main production region within South Africa can kind of be broken into the east and the west growing area. In the east, rainfall a little bit below average, but as you can see, no extended periods of dryness that would have really stressed the crop. Overall, timely rains throughout the season. In the west, even much better conditions, somewhat above average rainfall. And importantly, throughout the growing season, no concerns with heat stress, good temperatures, and supporting a favorable production outlook. And that the favorable production outlook is also supported by satellite data. The Vegetative Health Index shows the health of the vegetation through the main growing area here is quite strong. You want to see the greens and blues. That's the strongest values of those VHI values, and that's where we clearly see a lot of those greens and blues in that main production area. So, in summary, we raised production, raised South Africa's corn production forecast by about 5% from last month. This reflects both higher area, both an increase in area that is based on official data from the Crop Estimates Committee in South Africa, and we raised the yield based on these growing conditions I just described. So the global corn balance sheet, a few things to talk about here. Feed use up 1.3 million tons. That is mainly higher feed use in India, where again, I just noted earlier, the much larger crop in India. Also higher feed use in Turkey, reflecting increased imports by Turkey. And that's partially offset by lower feed use in the EU, a little bit smaller crop there, and lower feed use forecast in Iran, based on lower imports to shipments to date. Observed, again, shipments to date into Iran, suggesting lower availabilities for feed use. Global corn trade up 400,000 tons this month, mainly higher exports out of South Africa, which we just discussed, the larger crop there, larger exports from Russia and India, all countries that are showing larger supplies this month. Ending stocks raised 2.1 million tons. That is higher ending stocks in India, South Africa, and a little bit higher in Brazil as well. U.S. corn balance sheet, no changes to any of the categories this month, except season average price. We raised 5 cents per bushel, now at $4.15 per bushel. We're expecting a little bit of a seasonal rise in prices in the months ahead. And at this point, 65% of that crop is marketed or thereabouts. All right, soybeans, global soybean production. I put up last year's production forecast here on the left side of the slide, mainly just to highlight that we raised Brazil's production estimate from last season by 1 million tons. And this is just based on updated use data. We're taking a full accounting of the supply and use within Brazil. Observed a higher crush based on data that they released. Given their use, crush and exports, it was pretty clear that they had to produce more than we had originally forecasted, just to account for that higher use. So that is reflected in this 1 million ton increase in production forecast for last season. For this season, 25-26, Paraguay raised 500,000 tons. Also raised our South Africa forecast a bit, and that's consistent with that good weather that we talked about for South Africa corn as well. And those increases are partially offset by a reduction in our production forecast for Uruguay, where it has been relatively dry this season. Global soybean balance sheet, beginning stocks estimate raised 1 million tons. That reflects that increase in Brazil, carrying in higher stocks into the new year. Crush, global soybean crush raised 1.4 million tons. That is higher crush in the US, Brazil, and Algeria. Trade shows no change on net this month, but there are some offsets there. We're forecasting now higher exports out of Brazil and Paraguay, offset by reduced export forecasts for the US and Uruguay. Ending stocks down 500,000 tons, and that is tighter stocks primarily in Brazil and Argentina. And we're back. All right. US soybean supply and use. Let's see, US crush raised 35 million bushels. That that's based on observed pace of crush and reflecting strong soybean meal domestic use, strong demand there, pulling that crush higher. And that's offset by about an equal reduction in our export forecast, adjusted lower this month based on just the observed pace to date that we've seen, and also strong competition from South America, where prices are a bit lower than in the US. We're at a price premium to South America. So that competition, and given the current pace, is why we reduced our export forecast this month. Season average market price raised 10 cents per bushel, now at $10.30 per bushel. And that would be up year over year, 30 cents. All right, moving into cotton. Again, for cotton, I put up the back year, the old crop year, just to highlight here that we made an adjustment for India, raised that production forecast for the old crop by 800,000 bales. And some of that carries into the new year production forecast as well, which we raised 300,000 bales. And essentially what's going on there is we did a new review of cotton arrivals data. So this is cotton as it arrives to the gins. And we're seeing that those arrivals are exceeding what the official data from India is reporting. So we're basing our production forecast more on that arrivals data, given that that is cotton that is actually being delivered. So given that, we adjusted our back year forecast by 800,000 bales, and our current forecast for the new year by 300,000 bales higher. Other countries, just to note, China, we raised 300,000 bales. We've been raising China's cotton forecast for several months in a row now, based on very strong classings data. So again, this is reflecting cotton as it's arriving for inspections within China, just showing again very large crop there, up considerably, almost 3.8 million bales from last year. And we also raised Pakistan 300,000 bales. This is mainly reflecting information from Post, USDA Post. There's always some unknown amount of cotton in Pakistan, maybe 20 to 30% that's sold through unofficial channels. And Post adjusted their forecast based on that to account for more of that unofficial trade. And that raises Pakistan's production forecast to 5.3 million bales. So for the global cotton balance sheet, consumption raised this month 600,000 bales. That is mainly higher consumption in India and China, and that's consistent with those increases in their production forecasts that I just noted on the previous slide. That higher consumption in those two countries is partially offset by lower consumption in Bangladesh and Vietnam. Global cotton trade lowered 200,000 bales this month. That reflects lower imports by Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Vietnam. And ending stocks up 700,000 bales. That's higher ending stocks again in India and China, given the higher production that we're forecasting there. U.S. cotton balance sheet, again, no changes to any of the main supply and use categories, but we did raise our season average price by a penny a pound, up to 61 cents per pound based on recent strength in those prices observed in at futures prices and cash as well. All right, moving into sugar. Overall, pretty small adjustments across the U.S. sugar balance sheet. Beet sugar production lowered a little bit this month, 33,000 tons, reflecting an increase in basically processor reporting, higher beet pile shrink, and lower recovery, driving that reduction. On the other hand, cane sugar production raised 20,000 tons. Again, this is mainly processor reporting, particularly in Florida in this case, where they're still assessing the impact of the freeze from early February. Imports, U.S. sugar imports, raised re-export imports by 50,000 tons. That's just based on pace. High tier sugar imports raised 34,000 tons this month. Basically what we're doing there is we adjusted our forecast going forward to be more consistent with previous years. This is all specialty sugar, essentially our forecast for specialty sugar, high tier imports. We're continue to see that come in at a fairly strong pace. So we adjusted that forecast to be more consistent with the strength that we've seen over the previous several years. Exports, on the other hand, we lowered 25,000 tons. Again, that just based on observed pace. And domestic deliveries, so that's essentially domestic sugar use, raised 94,000 short tons. Again, that's based on pace and particularly driven by direct consumption imports. So given both the increases in supplies and in use, overall leaves ending stocks essentially unchanged, and just a small reduction in the stocks to use ratio this month. Mexico, increased our production forecast, for Mexico, 101,000 metric tons. This is a forecast mainly informed by, FAS Post in Mexico, with that higher production. All of that is balanced through increased exports. Of course, all of those exports are going to third countries. None of it will be coming into the US. So this production increase doesn't have any direct implications for the US balance sheet. And meat and dairy, we'll wrap things up here. Gonna be focusing on 2026 current calendar year. 2025 data is now finished. So last month we had a little bit more to talk about on 2025. This month we're focused just on 2026. So for beef, we lowered our beef production forecast by 20 million pounds. That is lower steer and heifer slaughter, just reduced marketings, partially offset by higher weights and increased cow slaughter. Pork production reduced this month by 300 million pounds. Expecting a smaller pig crop, and this is incorporating information from the Hogs and Pigs report, came out at the end of last month, showing lower farrowings, but partially offset by higher pigs per litter, so higher productivity, but on net leading to smaller pig crop and therefore smaller pork production forecast for this year. Broiler forecast raised 200 million pounds this month. That's all in the first half of this year based on hatchery data and higher weights, observed higher weights. And turkey production forecast increased this month based again, just incorporating the latest hatchery data, showing higher production there. Prices, relatively small changes for most of the prices this month. We now have final prices through the first quarter of 2026, so we're incorporating that. Hog price forecast, that's one of the biggest changes we made this month, lowered by $1.13 per hundredweight. That is lower prices mainly in the second and third quarters of this year. And for poultry, broiler price forecast reduced 0.4 cents per pound. Consistent with higher supplies, our increased supply forecast, and that is lower prices all in the first half of the year. Turkey price forecast raised 0.8 cents, and that is just based on observed prices the first quarter of this year. Regarding U.S. meat trade, beef export forecast, we lowered 30 million pounds this month based on observed pace and tight supplies. As we know, pork export forecast raised a bit this month, again, just reflecting recent pace and good sales to, or strong sales to many of our leading markets. Broilers, on the other hand, our export forecast, we reduced 75 million pounds. Worth noting, we're seeing some pretty stiff competition in global markets from Brazil. So that is taking away some of our export competitiveness and is likely reflected in that somewhat slower export pace that we're observing there for broilers. Turkey, we raised 30 million pounds, based again, strong, just observing pace of trade. This increase all in the first half of the year, and that is primarily to Mexico. Other item here worth noting or emphasizing a bit, beef imports raised our beef import forecast 115 million pounds. Tight US beef supplies, low US cow slaughter. Most of this beef coming in is processing grade beef and mostly coming in from Brazil and Oceania. All right, for dairy, milk production forecast raised 600 million pounds this month, just based on the most recent milk production report. Higher cow inventories offsetting somewhat lower growth in milk per cow. And then in terms of dairy trade, main factor kind of driving the changes this month is that we've got big supplies and competitive prices for cheese and butter. So butter import forecast, we lowered this month, as you can see, 500 million pounds. On the other hand, exports for both, I should say, fat basis imports, that's fat basis imports, that's mainly butter, lowered our butter import forecast by 500 million pounds. Fat basis exports increased 1.5 billion pounds. That is primarily higher exports of cheese and butter. And skim solids basis exports, that is primarily accounted for in higher exports of cheese. So again, big competitive supplies of cheese and butter in the US supporting that export outlook. And wrapping things up here with dairy product prices, worth focusing here on non-fat dry milk. We've seen a lot of strength lately in those prices. Raised our price forecast by 19 cents per pound this month. Basically what's driving that, very high protein demand in general. Tight supplies of skim milk, tight supplies of skim milk for drying into non-fat dry milk, tightening up those supplies, still strong demand for the protein, pulling prices higher. Butter, our butter price forecast, we reduced a little bit this month just based on those large supplies, and cheese prices increased based on recent observations. So pulling that all into the class prices and all milk prices, that means class 3 prices are up primarily on those stronger cheese prices. Class 4 prices up a fair amount this month based on those stronger NDM prices. And all milk price was raised to 80 cents per hundredweight to $20.50. Down just a bit from last year. But better than we were forecasting earlier in the year. So I'm going to wrap things up there. Thank you all for attending, and for those folks online, thank you for attending as well. And we will see you back here next month. And that